Hi, everybody. Welcome to Data and the Greater Good. My name is Matthew Weber. I'm one of the organizers for the meetup. We also have Mary here, who's going to be speaking. She's one of the co-organizers. And we also have, hi, Elaine. Elaine's also starting as a new organizer, so we're really happy to have her here as well. We are really happy to be here with Workbench. I want to take a minute to thank them as one of our partners for this space here. Workbench is an enterprise VC fund here in New York City, and they invest in enterprise startups throughout the country. And they have a great enterprise tech community right here in New York. You can see many of their companies on that wall over there, and their startups are always hiring. So is anybody here looking for work today? I see a couple of people. Great. Then that's a great place to look. In fact, I think we'll take a few moments in a minute. If you're looking, we'll ask who else might be hiring here today as well. If you'd like to learn more about the job opportunities with those startups, though, be sure to grab a business card from the front desk. And we want to say thank you to Workbench. Thank you very much, Workbench, for having us here today. We also want to say thank you to Development Guild, DDI. That's where I work also. Development Guild sponsored the pizza today, and it's brilliant, yes. And Development Guild focuses on working with nonprofits. They help them with fundraising, so organizations have the money to deliver on their mission. They help them with executive search so that they can find the people to deliver on their mission. And finally, they actually will help craft a strategy to work out their mission as well. If you'd like to learn more about the services from Development Guild or anything else about what's up over there, I'm happy to talk to you about that after the show as well. A few of our great clients that we have at Development Guild, lots of great arts clients as well. Again, we do some wonderful work. I'd love to talk to you about it. Tonight's speaker, we have Shannon Darrough from the Museum of Modern Art. And we are doing a bit of a fireside chat. And Mary's going to be taking it away. Let's get a round of applause. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. So I'd just like to see, before we start, how many people have been here before to a Data and the Greater Good meetup? Okay, great. So for those who have been here before, it's a bit different format. And for those who haven't, you don't know anything that's different. So we're doing a bit of a fireside chat, question and answer tonight to have more of an informal conversation to learn about Shannon's work. And I want to thank Shannon for being here and speaking with us.
Thank you.
So first, Shannon is the Director of Digital Media at the Museum of Modern Art. And so I want to hear a little bit first about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I clawed my way to the top. No, just kidding. First off, Matt was talking about hiring. My department is actually hiring a full stack developer, and it's really hard to find full stack developers. So if you know any, we're looking for one at MOMA. Probably can't match the salaries that are being offered by the people on the wall over there, but it's much more interesting work, I think. So how did I get to where I am today? It's funny, like, if I interviewed myself, who I was back then, there is no way I would have given myself back then a job. I kind of got lucky, I think. I've been at MoMA for 14 years. 14 years ago, digital was a very different thing in the museum space. It was a very different thing altogether. I had a design background, print, and then digital. MoMA was looking for a digital designer, and my boss was stupid enough to hire me. And since then, I guess my responsibilities have grown. My boss left. I took her place. What has prepared me for that? I think, I come from a design background. I think, there's been an ascendance of UX and design thinking in the last 10 years, so that my background has equipped me to, kind of value and be skilled at thinking in the ways that help deliver better digital experiences. So I think that was one thing. Also, just spending a lot of time at a museum is really valuable too. They're quirky cultures sometimes. Yuji might might agree. Yuji works at MoMA also. They're unique places, and so I've immersed myself in that culture, and so I think that has been helpful too.
Great, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about how the museum is unique. I know that doesn't really have to do with data, but I think that'd be interesting to hear maybe one example of.
Yeah, well, I mean, so MoMA is a place with a long and esteemed history. The priorities of a museum are so different than many other organizations. We value artists, we value our collection. Artists are very interesting people to work with. They have different priorities, so you have all these kind of unique points of view, and you're dealing with things that presents, specifically art, modern and contemporary art, that present a lot of very interesting, sometimes controversial, sometimes difficult to understand, always fascinating points of view. So there are very few organizations that I can think of where you're kind of immersed in that. So it's unique, I think.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. So as director of digital media, what does your role look like, both from day to day and in a broader high-level view?
Yeah, so I think maybe it'd be helpful to define what digital media is at MoMA. So my team is basically a product team. So there are about 10 of us, 4 devs, 2 designers, a product manager, assistant director, so that's basically the product team there. And what we're responsible for are the major digital platforms. So that's primarily the website, that's also our app, and more the lobby information screens. They're just becoming a kind of a bigger part of our purview. There are other things like some in-gallery interactives, and we help with kind of the UX needs across the organization. There are some public-facing digital products that we don't oversee. Things like, for example, the kiosks are not something, we don't build the kiosks, but we are heavily involved in what's presented to the user. So that's what my team does. In terms of my day-to-day, I spend a lot of time in meetings. I guess that's, not so uncommon. But what I'm doing is trying to translate the needs and ambitions and desires of a very big and complex and ambitious organization into a feasible roadmap, basically. I guess, that's what I'd say, that my team can then execute on. So there's a lot of hand-holding, a lot of explaining, a lot of saying no, some saying yes, but it's always, very interesting, sometimes tiring.
Great, and my next question was actually, how does your role reflect and help achieve the mission of the museum? Do you think that kind of answers it, or would you like to expand?
Well, yeah, I guess, so specifically for my role, what I'm trying to do is do the most impactful work that is in line with the mission of the museum, in the most sustainable, feasible, maintainable way. So there are lots of things we want to do, and so it's in line with the mission in the sense that we're trying to filter out, we're trying to come up with priorities. A big part of what I do is try to set priorities. And that is directly related to what we do, like the overall like reach and user or visitor experience. Because if we didn't have that, that filter, the set of priorities, a roadmap, we would be doing so many things that we wouldn't be able to do any of them well. Makes sense. Yeah.
And so you said your work kind of crosses over with visitor experience as you're managing the interface that visitors digitally interact with. Does it cross over with any other departments like fundraising, communications?
It crosses over with everybody. So I think, I'd say the website and our physical architecture are maybe, the two sole things that every department in the museum, let's say 85% of them, has some sort of stake in. Individual departments are very interested in the website because in some ways it's what makes them exist in a way. I think it's kind of interesting if you can't Google something, does it exist? In a way, and I think that's how a lot of the departments at MOMA feel about the website. So there's a lot of interest in how they appear there, in the content there, in their ability to update the content, in how the content is presented in the navigation, for example. So all these kind of hairy things. And that's a lot of what I have to kind of navigate and come up with a solution that is something that our users can understand, and ideally our users can understand and feel really good about, and not have to decipher.
Yeah, well, that actually leads perfectly into my next question, which is, what challenges is the Museum of Modern Art facing generally and in regards to your work, and how are you using technology, data, analytics, digital media to address those challenges? It's a big question.
Yeah. So
give us all your secrets.
So what challenges do we face? We face a changing cultural landscape. I think we have a lot of things on our side that put us in, maybe a more privileged position than some other museums, smaller museums. So I feel very lucky about that. We're in Midtown Manhattan, which is kind of a blessing and a curse. If you have to work there, it's a curse. But if you're trying to get tourists to come there, it's a great place to be. We have an unparalleled collection of modern and contemporary art, so that's fantastic. But we still have to kind of live up to the quality bar that we've set for ourselves, and so that just means constantly striving to do better. It's a place that really prides itself on perfection, and so from a digital product point of view, if you are kind of creating software in a modern way where you're, we like to take a lean approach, so like minimum viable products, getting something out there quickly that you can then test and respond to, but this is where data comes in. That's antithetical to how museums think about how they present themselves to the public. Exhibitions are things where people work their asses off for 2 to 3 years, even more, 4. Work. You open the door, and that's kind of it. Whereas a digital product is you launch something as quickly as possible, knowing that it is not a polished, finished thing, and then add to it. So I think one of the challenges I face, or especially in the past, has been selling this methodology to the museum, getting the museum used to not being perfect on day one. So maybe that's a challenge I face.
I'm gonna jump ahead in my list of questions here, because that actually goes, I know, it's a big deal for me not to go follow my list. But so how does analytics impact your work? And then how do you promote buy-in for analytics? So how are you measuring your success and getting the museum to buy in?
Yeah. So, analytics are about, or one major thing is about making sure you're doing work that is actually being used, and that you're doing your work smartly. So, and one thing we don't have a lot of at MoMA, like in my department, is we don't have a lot of free time. So we have to be very, very targeted about what we work on. So analytics is crucial in helping us understand what people are doing on our website or app, not our lobby screens, unfortunately. We do user observation for that, but we don't have like an analytics platform with cameras watching what people are doing. But so analytics helps us prioritize things. I'm saying prioritize a lot. I guess I do that a lot, and make sure that we are doing stuff that people use. I always think, my biggest goal is to build stuff that people use. Like I think that's true because I came from a not that that's a weird thing at all, but I got into design, and when I worked at a magazine in San Francisco. I used to live in San Francisco, and so I started, crafting things. I started designing things that were then read by thousands of people. It wasn't a huge magazine or anything, but so that was my introduction into design. Something that you worked on, and then lots of people would use it, and so that's always priority, sorry to use that again, but to make sure that what we're building is something that gets a lot of traction in a way. There was a second part too.
Well, I'm going to jump ahead again,
buy-in,
and then I'll come back.
Yeah, buy-in.
Well, actually, it kind of goes, how do you measure, is there specific metrics that you use to measure the success of you and your team? And then maybe we can go into how you grade
So we look at analytics for most of the things we build. I'd say like success metrics for the team is maybe more roadmap based. Like we have like a specific product roadmap that we're usually working on. So there are those basic metrics like getting your work done, which are very important. But then the analytics component comes in, where you're looking at after you finish these things, how people are using them, and how, and then ideally responding to them, to how people are using them. And I think that's one of the challenges working at most museums on digital products. Like we all know that we should be building, measuring, learning, building, measuring, learning, building, measuring, learning. And that, we all kind of aspire to do that. But it's really hard to kind of have the capacity to do any of those things really well. So, I think with analytics, there are probably 4 major stages that I can think of that an organization needs to go through. One is the buy-in part, like the appreciation, the go-ahead to not just say, hey, we like analytics. We're going, we're going to be data informed. We're going to attack things in an evidence-based manner. That's easy to do. What the harder thing to do is say, hey, we're going to let that team not do 30% of what they were doing before and focus on that. Like that's the thing, like really committing to it. So that's the first step, like kind of resourcing that. So second step is then building out the infrastructure so that you're logging everything and you have all your platforms set up. Third thing is then monitoring it, like asking the questions, monitoring it. The fourth thing is actually responding to what you've learned, and all those things take a lot of work. And I think we're pretty good at, I'd say 1 is we're probably a B+. 2, we're getting there. Maybe we're B-. 3, like it just gets a little worse and worse because we're at the beginning of that. I think we're better than most museums probably, but we're still catching up because it's just hard to carve out enough time to do that right. Mm-hmm. So that's a bit of a challenge.
And so in our last few meetups, last time we were here, we heard from the head of digital for Public Art Fund, and before that, the head of digital for New York Public Radio. And they both kind of talked about just analyzing metrics of their digital platforms to then make decisions. Is that your responsibility, or do you kind of drive the platforms and then pass that on to a different team to make decisions?
Well, I think it's a bit shared. I'd say it's mostly me. Like I'm or mostly us, I'm the one who uses that information to kind of either make decisions or push decisions through that are based on like reality in a way, you know. So yeah, I'd say that there are different like pockets of champions of data in the museum. And so if you're working with those people, then it's really easy to like, you know, decide on like success metrics and, you know, even decide to actually not do something if those metrics aren't met. That's like, you know, kind of a big deal. But then with other you know, areas at the museum, they're either new to it or possibly even a little skeptical of it, which can be completely understanding. It's kind of an academic institution in some ways, so and it's an arts organization, so I think it's totally understandable. And with those kind of those relationships, there's a little more education involved, and maybe a little more. It's kind of like you have to lay out the importance of being very, how do you say this? You have to say, I mean, you really have to talk about how, you know, everything's an opportunity cost and we can only concentrate on the things that are really performing well. So let's look at the data. And then that can then drive to better decision making, I think.
And in your experience, do you think it's better to look at metrics and then make decisions off of those and then say, oh, this was a good decision, and that helps educate and create buy-in? Or do you think it should be kind of the other way around, where you have to create the buy-in and education first?
Ideally, it's the latter, where you're talking about goals and coming up with how you would measure them before you really dive into building anything. Because if you do that, you can work on the problem more incrementally. If you have to build something and then monitor it, then there's always that tendency, like if that's the way you're proving that something does or does not work with someone, then that person can always go, well, you didn't do enough with it, we have to just do more. But if you have that buy-in from the beginning and can come up with a plan, like a shared plan that both people or both parties believe in, then I think already you're starting from a better place, of you know, a place of trust maybe, you know. So I think that's always the preferred option.
And when you are working with other departments, working across silos, do you think there are other barriers other than just the buy-in to analytics, or do you think that's kind of a major barrier?
I think there are tons of barriers. Yeah, yeah. That's what makes it. That's what makes life interesting, I guess. So that, you know, there are analytics are one thing. Analytics are, what's nice about analytics is it's not very subjective. So you know, if you can get people to kind of just appreciate the analytics, then that can make the conversation a lot more straightforward. But there are all sorts of different things that can come in the way of a shared vision. You know, things like the design of something, the way something is described, the content, the titling, like so many, the way something is marketed, the way the social media campaign around something. There's just so many things to kind of to align in a way. So I think analytics are one part, but I think it's a very powerful part, assuming that the counterparty agrees agrees in that.
Great. And I think my last question is, I know I've asked a few big questions. I think this is probably the biggest one. But we've talked about challenges and barriers, but what opportunities do you see going forward where digital media and technology and data and analytics can be leveraged to help MOMA and its mission and just the greater nonprofit world in
Yeah,
general?
so we're at a data and the greater good meetup here. So I assume that most people believe in, you know, the positive potential of data. So I think kind of like the how I was laying out those 4 big steps that have to happen to get to a good place where you're using data all the time to inform decisions in a, you know, a smart but mission-led way. I think like big data is still pretty early in the sense that, you know, in certain companies and, you know, certain larger companies or startups that are really data focused, they understand what it takes to do it, and they put a whole ton of work into doing it right. I think what's going to happen, though, is like some of the companies here, some of the enterprise-focused startups are going to start productizing these things. So it isn't going to take, you know, data scientists and you know, your own data warehouses, and then you know, business analysts, and like that whole organizational structure to get data right. I think there's going to be more SaaS platforms that allow you for like regular people to do it well and smartly. And you know, one of the challenges we have around data at MOMA is we're pulling in tons of data all over the place. You know, we have our POS systems that sell tickets, that sell retail products. We have our membership systems. We have, you know, our digital platforms. They're all logging tons and tons of data. But it's really hard to get that all in a single place where, you know, it's all structured and available and ready to be analyzed and ready to, you know, make our lives better and richer. I think that's going to get easier and easier. Yeah. So
it's an opportunity.
That's
for
an
anyone
opportunity.
looking.
Yeah, that's an opportunity for these companies here. That's no plug.
Before I open it up to everybody else, is there anything else that you'd like to say that maybe crossed your mind that we haven't been able to comment on yet?
No, not really. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'd love to open it up to questions.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. So I have a question regarding the membership data. So my company also in the stage we are trying to convert membership free and to paid. I'm wondering how do you leverage existing information and what things you have been doing to test different outreach to potential members?
So that's definitely not my area. So I'm not going to, I don't have a lot to add there. We also don't have, I guess the analog at MOMA would be how do we encourage people to be members? We don't have like a freemium model or anything like that. So how do we get people to come through the door or come to our website and become members? So I think the way we do that most effectively is we have a great experience when you come through the door. One of our biggest channels is actually buying memberships in the lobby. That's either before or after a visit. Often it's before because of the membership benefits you get regarding free entry for guests and stuff. So there's that incentive there. But our members, or a lot of our members, love MOMA, you know, and they love MOMA because of the art. They love MOMA because of that experience. They love MOMA because they have a nice interaction with one of our staff. You know, that always ranks high. We do surveys all the time, like why did you have did you enjoy your visit? Yes, no, why? You know, and positive interactions with staff are important too. They always show up like among the top. So what we try to do is do a great job with our, you know, what we do, our core business, I guess you'd say. And that, if we do that well, that makes convincing people to become members a lot easier.
Do you have an example of how the data that you have has informed or helped drive a curation decision? And if not,
It's
do you
not.
see it
No,
doesn't?
No, yeah, definitely not.
Do you anticipate that becoming
I kind of hope not.
likely?
I don't really, yeah, I don't, because I think, you know, people come to MoMA because of its collection. I'd say they're, you know, in terms of the art program, the gallery program, because of the collection and because of the scholarship that goes into a lot of the exhibitions there. And that's our moat, right? You know, that's how we can differentiate ourselves from almost everybody. We're really good at that. And I think that it would, I don't know if it would benefit us to move in another direction. I think there might be other avenues for that, but I really think that a lot of the people who come through the door are looking for that expertise. I think some of the challenges we have are translating that expertise into things that people can understand. You know, that's definitely something that I think might use some interpretive muscle, but I don't think it's about changing the ideas at all. Like, I think it's about making those ideas more accessible. Like, if that were the case, let's say 80 years ago, I don't think.
Yeah, it could definitely have like negative implications on the type of art that you do. What about in terms of like finding new artists faster, right? Finding the interesting artists and more like whoever is making those decisions, like are there ways that information you have can augment that?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. And that's what we like try to do on MOMA.org. I call it a virtuous cycle of discovery, like a kind of a cheesy way of saying it. But you know, we always try to make it so that where you've landed, and a ton of people who go to the website go directly to an object page, let's say, or an artist page. But we don't want that to be the last page. We want to suggest different pathways from there. So that's actually one of the major priorities of our of my department. That's kind of a KPI of ours. But there are also interesting ways to use data and new technologies to kind of aid that virtuous cycle of discovery. For example, last year we did a project with Google Arts and Culture. Yeah, Google Arts and Culture now, that's what they're called. That's their nonprofit wing, where they analyzed, we have, this is kind of a long story, we have about 35,000 exhibition photos online, so these are photos that document our exhibition program all the way back to 1929, so it's pretty cool. Like, if you want to see any exhibition we've ever done, we have, you know, thousands and thousands of photos that document them. When we launched this, which was about 18 months ago, it was like this major gift to the world, except none of these photos actually had any information about the actual works in them. So you'd see this great photo with, you know, all these works in it, but there was no information about what those were. And so we worked with Google Arts and Culture, where they used computer vision and machine learning to kind of use our online collection to find those works in those images. And then we created a link there. So I think things like that are where we can use kind of, not necessarily data, although there's a ton of visual data there, but to take things in a new direction and kind of unlock a lot of information in the content that we already have, specifically archival and historical content. I think that's really interesting in a way, so yeah.
Follow on to that. I mean, one question I want to ask immediately. I mean, you are 10 people in your department, and you're maintaining the entire website.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Then they ask you to do analytics. I think you would be severely understaffed.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It doesn't sound realistic, and they ask you to do a lot big amount of analytics. But on the Google project, was this actually successful? Because I can imagine this is a very, very hard thing to do.
I think it was successful, yeah. It was successful in the sense that, one, we created I think, a really great user experience that created this link between two major sections of our site that didn't have any sort of real dynamic linking, the collection and our exhibition history. And also, people use it. So that's the cool thing, too. Like, we monitor usage, and people use it. So I'd say it was successful. Whether we could... We don't have the machine learning and computer vision capacity in-house to take it farther by ourselves, but we have created this this new link or these thousands and thousands and thousands of new links that have been really useful. And actually, because of this project, we actually built a kind of vetting system that allows humans to vet these links when they come up. But now that's being used by our collections management department, where whenever they get new exhibition photos in, they actually manually make these links. So it's been this great thing where suddenly these photos are now that much more valuable, and now it's kind of it's been added to our workflow. So. And they do a better job than the machine did, so it's great. Yeah.
Shannon, could you please share your experiences with, like, say, most successful project and like the worst failure, and why?
Yeah. Well, so that last project I think was really successful because I liked it because it was a great collaboration where we were really bringing Google Arts and Culture on to help us with a real problem that we had. They didn't suggest this project. They actually said, we want to do a machine learning project with you. Any ideas? And this was our idea. And a lot of times, those types of collaborations never lead anywhere, right? Like, great idea, and does it actually lead to something? But it worked really well. They actually gave us the data. We incorporated into our platform, built a good user experience around it, got a lot of press. Another, I think, big success was the project that preceded that kind of led to this, which was the addition of the exhibition history to our calendar. So previously, our exhibition history went back I think to 1991 or something, and that was just that's when we started putting our exhibitions online, and so that's where we had data from. But we worked with our archives department. They actually worked for 14 years digitizing all these assets in our exhibition history, all those 30,000 photos, thousands of press releases, thousands of exhibition catalogs, and then we put that all online. So that was stuff that was basically hidden to the world that is now available to scholars. Scholars are one of our major user segments. And I think an indication of the the success of that was the collection used to be our most popular section by traffic. After we put the exhibition history on, that's now the most popular section. So it was kind of a big shift there. Failures. I think you look back. I think the website we had before this latest one was a failure in the sense that it was the product. So I always say that a good digital product at a museum is that sweet spot between the mission, your users, and I used to say technology, but I think it's just reality, what you can do. I think our last website was really heavy on the museum, the mission part, which meant that it was super, super hard to figure out how to get around. The navigation was just a reflection of our org chart with underneath these vague rubrics and stuff. So I think you look back on whatever you've done before, and you always see all the mistakes in it. And so I think the important thing is to learn and just try to do things better.
I wonder if there is an ambition or a plan to do more in the galleries. I mean, I know you guys are in the midst of a vast rebuild, and so, but I wonder in terms of the whole question of, moving the digital from being something sort of, that brings people in or informs people after they've gone to actually transforming people's experience while there without, having too heavy a curatorial, or I mean, something that's actually enhancing curatorial.
That's a great question because it's something we talk about and debate all the time. Yeah, I'd say there is the ambition, but again, like kind of making sure that we're taking all those things that you were talking about into consideration and being very careful and deliberate about it. Like what we don't want is digital for digital. You see that in a lot of museums. Sometimes it really makes sense, I think, for certain museums. And sometimes you see that it's just gratuitous, there are gratuitous screens everywhere. I think it's hard to do something really, really well. And so our preference has been to be very, very careful about the screens we put in there, and that they have to really, really tightly adhere to the kind of curatorial intent. So like you'll see we have these beautiful 27-inch surfaces embedded in the Microsoft Surface touch screens embedded in this cabinetry, so you don't even know it's a Microsoft Surface, and it allows you to interact with either portfolios or books that are right there that you can't touch. And I think it's fairly simple in terms of like a digital product. Hard to do it at scale because we have to do it all the time and have to be able to switch things out. But I think, that has demonstrated that people like these things, that there's a use for them. And I think, I think we do want to do more, but just be very, very careful about it. Yeah, it's not like the whole thing is like, sometimes I get the question, what are you doing, or what are we doing, what are you guys doing, what digital things are you guys doing in the galleries? And it's more like, what problems are you, what problems are we trying to solve, as opposed to like, what's the digital component? I actually always say that if we really want our visitors to see something, then the best way to do it is to put it on the wall, like as a big wall label or wall graphic, or like once you have anything behind a screen, then you're just losing people right off the bat.
Well, I have to say I thought the Charles White was significantly enhanced by the opportunity to actually hear him, which was offered through a Surface, and also the is it Ghanaian guy who did the fantastical cityscapes.
The VR, you're talking about the VR experience that just went out.
The VR one, in the design second floor,
Isaac Bodas Kingley's.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the screen hearing his, or going to visit his home and see the background and relationship of the building to.
Yeah. Oh, there was a VR experience though in a corner that it was really hard to find. So that was kind of a major foray into VR for that. So that's what I thought you were. Yeah, but we're also really big believers in audio because it doesn't involve a screen and it doesn't get in between you and the thing that you came to Midtown to see, and you get that interpretive layer. And so we spend a lot of time crafting that content, working with artists and curators and people, outside of those two segments, to come up with really fantastic audio. That I think is like one of our most powerful interpretive channels, which is digital in terms of the delivery. We have like the app that we have and the mobile, or not the mobile, the website that we have that delivers them. Put a lot of work into making it a very seamless experience, but it's only audio, so people go, that's not digital, even though they don't understand the infrastructure that went into producing a system that allows people to stream all this audio and our educators to change out audio all the time and stuff. Like, they just don't appreciate that.
This question is not really about data. It's a little philosophical, but my mind started going. There was a book written in the early 20th century by a guy named Benjamin, Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because the art that forms the Museum of Modern Art came at this time in reaction to the historical impact of mechanical reproduction on art. But in the 21st century, you could look at art in the age of digital distribution. And I'm wondering what that's doing to art and what the museum's perspective is on how art is changing.
So yeah, that's an easy one. So first of all, so this is not the museum's perspective, like what I'm going to say. This is just my perspective. And it's funny because you mentioned this question, and I was just thinking about something. Like, we get a lot of first-time visitors to the Museum of Modern Art. A lot of people want to see stuff on the 5th floor. They want to see Starry Night and all the masterpieces that are up there. You walk in there, and it's like a art history book, right? And so one thing I was thinking about recently was we have so many first-time visitors, not so many repeat visitors, and I was wondering, like, since we're surrounded by art all the time and it's basically there at the touch of our fingertips, does that mean we have the desire to see something, but once we see it, we don't really need to again because we're surrounded by it? So that's just like a bit random there. So I don't. That's one. That just made me think of that. I think you were wondering more like how art is changing in a digital world. You're wondering how people are reacting or interacting with. Or I think so in terms of your question, I think actually the museum or the physical space there might become more and more valuable because we spend so much time online. Also, the social interactions you have there, from Benjamin's point of view, like the aura you have, you're surrounded by the aura of these unique pieces of art. What I think is interesting about digital now is you have, with, not to get into a blockchain thing, but you have, you have the introduction of, non-fungible tokens, and the idea that you do have these unique pieces, these digital assets there, and as more of our life is spent online, I think Fortnite is a really interesting phenomenon in terms of that. And more of our life is spent online, and the introduction of these unique, whatever they are, they could be pieces of art in these settings. That's where there's this weird convergence between the two. I don't have the answer there. I'm not even going to try to prognosticate, but I think there's a lot of interesting things that are happening recently that might bring what you're talking about into a digital realm too. But yeah.
I have a question about the digital media, right? I think this is really a department to improve the user experience for the visitor, for the artist, for different people. So for your department, usually how do you work with different departments, cross functions? And do you have any platform or strategy or tools, right, to help the organization deliberate the ideas, the strategy, can really make the best decision to, deliver the best experience for your audience?
Yeah, so I think that's where data can play a really important point because we work with everybody, as I mentioned. So many people are interested in the website specifically, maybe too interested. So how do we get to the best place where all those ideas come to, become a concoction that our users want to use and helps the mission of the museum. The way I do that is I try to get the right people in the room and get the right processes around these ideas. So we do, like we have we work with education a lot for user testing. We have a user testing team that user tests all the time. So that's one way that we try to make sure that we're coming up with the best solution. When we work with other teams, we ask them to participate in this too, so that they can actually see how their ideas like slap against the real world. It's always very humbling, I think. I think that's actually one of the most powerful things. The other thing is, I think it's really important to have a roadmap so that people across the organization understand what you're doing and that you have a plan and that it's a smart plan and the plan is aligned with the mission of the museum, so that they can kind of, first of all, appreciate what you're doing and then figure out, once they do that, once they can appreciate that you're busy and you're doing smart work, then it changes the tone of the conversation with them. It's not a feature request. It's how can we, I have this problem. Is there any way we can come to a better solution, as opposed to, I think you guys need to do this for me. It comes from like, where does this problem fit into the answers you're trying to deliver via this roadmap? So those are two things I use all the time, actually.
All right, let's get a round of applause for Shannon. All right, everybody, thank you very much for coming here tonight. We hope to see you again real soon. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. We have plenty of pizza if you'd like to help yourself. All right, good night.